Well, Reese, would you share with us a little bit about your own personal spiritual journey?
Okay, well, it started in Detroit. My parents were involved in the Unity Church, metaphysical. Uh,
Is the Unity Church like the Unitarian Church or not
no,
related?
it's not related,
Okay.
uh, but I had Unitarian church experiences later.
Yes.
But the Unity Church was really a metaphysical church where they were about intellectualizing spirituality,
Hmm.
if I could say it that way.
Hmm.
And they were very much into being good to people, doing good things, not so much doctrines or, you know, just being involved in that in a sense as a discipline. But they were very etheric, just put God in a little wider space,
Hmm.
which kind of give you an opportunity to explore yourself
Hmm.
a bit. And at that time, I was also going to a Lutheran parochial school,
Hmm.
and then the Lutheran church is much more disciplined and doctrinal oriented. Um, then went to TCU, which is really a disciplined Southern Baptist at that point in time. This is years and years ago.
Hmm.
But they were very orthodox, clothing, attitudes, and things of that nature. And then went from that to being in Arizona and spending time with the Indian tribes.
Hmm.
And that's when we got into the, how might I say, mind altering experiences.
Hmm.
They were very much into spending time in the desert.
Hmm.
Christ spent a good amount of time in the desert, and
Hmm.
I think a lot of the prophets from the scriptures. There's something very mystical and spiritual about living in a desert. And for 3.5 years, we actually, every full moon night, did ceremonies
Hmm.
where we would go out in the desert and climb mountains and
Hmm.
really experience the oneness with the universe. It's
Hmm.
just so expansive. On a full moon night in the desert, it's like being in the sun. And when you're on top of a mountain, we climb 2, 3 thousand feet and sit on a mountaintop and watch the sun go down, watch the moon rise, and spend the night communing
Wow.
with nature. And while that time period was going on, I was also playing a lot of music because I'm a full-time musician as well. And I was playing music with several spiritual groups out there, but we did some work for a monastery.
Hmm.
Um, and they were retreat oriented. I think that's what kind of got me into the retreat thinking.
Hmm.
They would do therapy for substance abuse or divorces or anger management, alcohol.
Hmm.
And they had a really wonderful place. They had horses, large acreage, in housing,
Hmm.
and they were really wonderful people. I went from that to being in New York with Eastern Indians and some yogis. And actually, the yoga that we practiced in New York was what they called nada yoga.
Hmm.
So it was the mysticism of sound. They used sound to open chakras.
Hmm.
So us being musicians back then, and the new equipment was coming out, synthesizers were being used, and so with the use of plants and music,
Hmm.
you could really go to places that you would normally not experience.
Hmm.
So being with the Indians was Eastern Indians was quite nice, and one of the yogis actually had named me Allah Rishi,
Hmm.
which he had known my religious background because I'd been an avid studier of the Bible,
Hmm.
and he always said that we would bring the Bible, the East and the West together,
Hmm.
because there's so much going on in the Bible that Western people don't really understand.
Yes.
They really look at it in dogma and disciplines.
Yes.
But when you look deeper into, especially the characters in the Bible, the individuals, the people, their spirituality, again, they're in the desert,
Mm.
so their connection to the spirit was really a bridge between God and these disciplines and dogmas that people involve themselves with. I mean, Jesus was always about showing that God was within.
Mm.
That's why he got in so much trouble.
Mm.
Because when you have religions, they want to teach that you have to go to church and you have to go to the pastor, you have to go to the minister, you have to have a go-between. And Jesus was teaching, no,
Mm.
you have to go within yourself.
Mm.
And the powers that be never did like that.
Mhm.
So that's why he had so much trouble with the institutions.
Do you think that when you relate to that, do you think that that's deliberate in some way? Do you think that that's a power move? Because it is, empowered people they're kind of dangerous for the status quo. They shake things up a little bit.
Well, when you say shake things up, I mean, it's like him going to the temple with a whip, beating the money changers.
Yes.
Self-awareness is total empowerment,
Mm.
and it completely removes the ability of the powers that be to bind you.
Mm.
I mean, bondage is what most systems are built upon. They really want to take the people and put them in boxes so that they will donate or pronate or participate in things that really aren't going to help them spiritually.
Mm.
And the more open they become, the less valuable they become to the institutions. And of course, they would be dangerous in that sense, because if they're trying to get a new jet,
Mm.
a person who's self-aware is not going to contribute to the jet.
Mm.
So that could be problematic from those standpoints. So what you're saying is 100% true.
Mm. Mm. I have a question for you about your own journey. Were there any major discoveries that you made on your road? Was there one or two in particular that kind of shifted you into the direction you ultimately moved in?
Yes, there were several experiences that I've had, and I'll just probably try to place it in the fact that, and I use Jesus's life as an example because for me as a Western person, it's easy to identify with,
Uh-huh.
but from a spiritual standpoint, not from the doctrine, because his doctrine was very simple: treat people like you want to be treated, and love God above all things. And that was the basis of his entire philosophy. But in his teachings, he mentioned that you had to die to the world. So to become a spiritual person, you have to give up being a terrestrial person. And I know the Jamaicans have a funny saying: everybody want to go to heaven, but nobody want to die to get there. So there's been several experiences in my life where I've actually had to let go of the desire to be terrestrially grounded.
Mm.
And there's been several of those experiences. And when you're doing plant-based medicine or activities of that nature, with the Indians, they are completely wanting you to release from the body.
Uh-huh.
And you hear about people having out-of-the-body experiences.
Yes.
Well, that's what the whole point is to release yourself from this terrestrial body.
Mm.
And hopefully you find out more about who you really are,
Mm.
why you're here,
Mm.
and hopefully where you're going to go.
Mm.
And this is in cultures on this planet, the people who are not, it works positively and negatively, because if you have no attachment to life, You could be a dangerous individual, as we see with people with negativity. This is one thing that the Indians were always very careful about, is when you go into those realms of your being, you want to be positive. It wants to be the upside, not the dark side.
Mm.
And it's very easy to become dark. And as you see on the planet, there's a lot of darkness. There's a lot of people who are cruel, who are constantly doing things to people that they wouldn't want anybody to do to them.
Yes.
So we're having a struggle on the planet of good and evil, which has always been the case. So, but the release of dying to the world is, like I say, every scripture has that philosophy.
Yeah.
Then you can be reborn. And that's where the Christian true concept of being reborn is that you are no longer bound by all of this bondage. Jesus was here to free you. You talk about free. So all of those concepts that you'd go to a church and hear, they have a real different meaning. Same words, but they have a completely different meaning. And I think people should be turned on to that concept. And it works for all religions. Like I say, I use Christ as an example because I'm from the West. If I was an Aborigine sitting in the jungle, I might have a different term, but the point of that oneness with the Spirit is going to become the same. And in all religions or faiths, it really boils down to there's good and bad. I mean, things are kind of simple. We've tried to make this very complicated. But you know a tree by the fruit it bears. Is it bearing good fruit or is it bearing bad fruit? There's nothing you're going to say that's going to change the realities of these things. So the object is, there's so many good people on this planet, but I just think they're overwhelmed by those who have greed, power, money. They're chasing these things. And good, solid, honest people who just want to live their lives, raise their families, you know, have a barbecue with their people, they're being overrun and overwhelmed. And hopefully this philosophy or this discipline, and as we're using our connection to the source, which is what I like that, or in Star Wars they use the Force, you have to use terms that are not so religiously connotative.
Yes.
Because they just, again, you put you in. I remember when I was teaching Christianity, there were 2,500 different denominations of just Christianity. And I would visit churches all over the country, and you would go to one church, and you were going to go to hell if the women wore pants. You would go to another church, the women are going to go to hell if they're dancing.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just like you're starting to break all these religions down by really things that, do they really matter?
Yeah.
And this is why, again, the prophets and the shamans and the teachers have just tried to get people to relax.
Yes. Yes.
Relax.
Yes.
Take it easy.
Yes.
Get rid of the tension and all those things, and then perhaps in yoga they always teach you to silence and peace. One yogi taught us that he asked the question of what's greater, inner space or outer space? And people would go, oh, outer space has got to be greater. He goes, no, you perceive outer space from within. And it's like, it's so profound that you go, wow. So the inner space, it always comes back to the inner being. And when you're in that space, you're connecting with other people who have gone to that space. That's when you realize your cosmic brotherhood. And you could be sitting with a guy in the Middle East or Australia, and you have a oneness. You don't speak the language, but you can just feel the oneness.
Yes.
Because they've achieved, you know, some may call it nirvana, some may call it rebirth, enlightenment, whatever the term is. We as humans have the ability to transcend our lives and our programming. Now, I could go on forever about this, but, you know, so just any other questions while we're here?
Well, I have one last one. Um, I'm curious what you think about this. I think we're living in an important time right now. And I think that's probably been said by human beings forever.
Right, right.
But I think when I learn and read about what's happening with the climate, and then I look at the advent of AI and the kind of exponential change and growth that's becoming possible, I I think that kind of that's that tussle between good and bad that's happening in the world is peaking. That's what I think. Um, and when I look at the work that we have the opportunity to do when I'm most grounded and most present, I relate to it as an opportunity to usher about a new age for human beings. But I'm curious, with no attachment to what I said being the way that things are, I'm curious what do you what what do you think about this time that we're living in history?
Well, as you said, through every generation, when Rome was coming to take over an empire, their world was coming to an end.
Yes.
I think what's happening now, to cut a long story short, this is the first time in human history we have the ability to destroy ourselves in a nanosecond. The Romans couldn't destroy the entire planet. They could wipe out cities. We could actually wipe the planet out.
Yeah.
And we have multiple ways of killing ourselves, between the slow way of poisoning the water, the air, humans, to nuclear extinction. We also are due for all sorts of things that are prophetic, because in a lot of these books there's great prophecies, asteroid strikes,
Uh-huh.
earthquakes.
Uh-huh.
We have all these things that we're due for.
Mm.
You're seeing for the people, for instance, in the Carolinas, when the storm went through the summer, the apocalypse had struck.
Yes.
When the fires took place in Hawaii or in LA,
Los Angeles.
the apocalypse had struck.
Yes.
Now, these are regional, but these regions are growing.
Yeah.
And not only do we have the ability to destroy ourselves, we also have the ability to save ourselves.
Mm.
So, yes, I think, and I agree with you, we have entered into a very interesting time.
Mm.
We have opportunity.
Mm.
We really do. This is the good news. I mean, there's tons of bad news. But the good news is we have the opportunity to make changes.
Yeah.
If we can get the powers that be in on this, but that would start with individuals coming together and making it so that it's worth their while.
Mm.
And that's our opportunity right now, is to try to make this worthwhile to save. This is our home. It's just a rock floating in outer space. And it can go poof at any minute. So, whether it be small wars, there's people right now they go to bed at night, there's missiles landing in their home.
Yes.
Their worlds are ending every day.
Yes.
There's no reason for that.
Yes.
We don't need to do that. There's plenty for everybody.
Mm.
But we have bigger fish to fry.
Mm.
We have to be concerned with the air, the water. Because none of this is going to matter if you can't breathe or drink water, if you have nothing to eat. It's all going to be moot. So, yes, I agree with you in that sense.
Yeah.
This is a unique time.
Yeah.
But that is the good news. We do have the power to
Yeah.
change.
It's what has the work with sacrament be so compelling to me right now, is that what it opens up in a human being, it's like all of that can come to light for an individual.
Yes.
An individual can get connected to, what on earth am I doing
Right.
in a moment?
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden a whole new future for that person is now possible. So that's what I hear when I hear you talk about this.
Absolutely.
There's also an opportunity with this.
And the sharing of it. When you're enlightened, people will come because they're looking for things right now. There's, like I said, there's a lot of bad news. So people are looking for a little up.
Yeah.
And these are the things you have to go inside. You have to, and that's what the sacraments do. They change the way you're doing things. What they say, being crazy is doing the same thing and expecting a different result.
Yes.
So the opportunity to change is with us. That's why the World of Grace is a great opportunity. And we'll be sharing that with others. And as we share, we'll be connecting with others who've already obtained and achieved those. So the more the family grows globally, the better this is going to be.
Extraordinary. Thank you.
Absolutely. My pleasure.
Is there anything else that you want to make sure is said?
I only have one thing to say. Treat people like you want to be treated.